All right, y'all. I am so thrilled to be bringing on my guest for today's Reecie Colbert Show, the one and only dynamic powerhouse Congressman from New York, Representative Jamaal Bowman. Welcome to the Reecie Colbert Show.
Peace and love. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Good to be with you.
Thank you for being with me. Listen, I have been admiring the gusto with which you've been out there, like really hammering home the message about what we need to do around gun control, what we need to do around organizing. I want to start off on one thing, though, because we've seen a lot happen over the past several weeks, in particular around the gun violence debate or gun control debate. You had this viral moment when you were just really like fed up with what's been happening. In my view, I feel like Republicans try to use decorum and so-called civility as a way to like mute the debate and to try to deflect away from their obstruction. And I feel like you're pushing back on that. Is that something that you've just made the decision, like this is how I'm going to roll? Has that always been your thing? Because it seems kind of new in terms of what we're used to seeing from congressmen.
No, absolutely. It's funny, after that exchange with Representative Massey went viral. I had like former students, my sisters, former colleagues who saw the video, and they were like, "Oh, that's Jamaal being Jamaal."
Right.
So for them, they're used to seeing that. And in terms of that moment, I was on the House floor having conversations with many of my colleagues about what happened in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, the idea of a 9-year-old casket was something that stuck in my head as I was leaving the House floor. So initially, I was kind of like yelling at journalists to make sure they ask these Republicans, why aren't they doing more about gun violence? Because you know how the news cycle works. We just go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I didn't want like another mass shooting to just be talked about for like, 6, 8, 12 hours, maybe.
Yeah.
And then we go on to like Trump's indictment or something else like that.
Right.
So I just started, barking at them, and Representative Massey approached me, and that's when we had the exchange. I mean, listen, this is personal for me.
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with it in my professional life, and now I'm here in Congress, so I'm not going to be quiet about it. I mean, listen, I had, this goes back to when I was in high school, getting into fights that led into shootouts. This goes back to my best friend's mother, cousin, and brother being killed by guns. This goes back to my best friend's sister and her daughter being killed by gun violence. And then in education, whether it's Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, the high school in Florida, it's a constant thing. And for Republicans to continue to try to stand on the Second Amendment, while 6-year-old bodies are being ripped apart by assault rifles, it's disgusting, it's deplorable, and it's downright evil.
Yeah.
To allow children to be slaughtered in this way, and that's now the #1 killer of kids in our nation. So it just happened organically.
Yeah.
I can't be here comfortable. I can be here comfortably inactive while kids are dying every day. And that's just the assault rifles. Gun trafficking is still a major issue. So even in New York State, where the gun laws are very, very strong, you have guns being trafficked in, and 70 to 80% of the gun crimes committed in New York State are committed with guns from out of state.
Right.
So DOJ, the FBI, the ATF, the CIA, the NYPD, people in the community, we got to work together to end this. This is a scourge, it's a disease, and everybody should be outraged about it.
I agree. I'm skeptical, though, that Republicans can be shamed into doing what you should do as a matter of conscience, as a matter of, like you said, not wanting to continue to bury children. And it has, like, the ante keeps upping each time, right? And it's like, okay, now we have another, we have a bank shooting, we have a school, like every possible forum that we could unconscionably have a shooting, it has happened. But I do think, though, where your passion and your forcefulness is effective is hopefully, I'm hoping it will like shake the hell out of people to get off the sidelines, you know? And one thing I always tell people was like, when you don't vote, you're abdicating your vote to the other side, to people who don't agree with you. How important do you think it is in terms of Dems and getting the non-voters, getting the disaffected voters in the game? How important is it to be forceful in the message and to like make it plain and let them know what's at stake?
It's everything. It's absolutely everything. The main reason I was confident that I could win my election in 2020 is because I was confident in my ability to increase voter turnout.
Yes.
Not just my ability, work with the grassroots, to work with former students and parents and other educators to do the work necessary to dramatically increase voter turnout.
Right.
And we tripled voter turnout from 2018 to 2020, and we tripled turnout amongst communities of color, within communities of color. Our biggest problem in our democracy is low voter turnout. Republican-led states, Republican-led districts, Republican-led counties. The reason why conservative, racist judges and elected officials continue to get into office is because the turnout in these areas are 50, 40, 30% in some cases. Democracy can't work unless everybody's a part of it. So when I speak, I'm speaking from the perspective of the historically disenfranchised, because I am one of them. I'm speaking as someone who comes from the outside. I'm not a career politician. I'm not a millionaire. I'm working class. So when I talk about education, housing, mental health, jobs, entrepreneurship, reparations, guns, women's right to choose, all those issues, I'm speaking about it from the perspective of regular, everyday folk who have lost faith in our democracy, and rightly so, because it worked for them for their entire lives. Like, damn, I can't get a job paying a prevailing wage. I ain't got no health care. Of utilities and housing and child care and transportation are all going up. I can't even save money. I can't take a little vacation with my family. These are all policy failures, but at the same time, you got the wealthiest among us taking outer space vacations with their family and friends.
Yeah.
So everyone knows it and sees it, but no one's calling it out. So now me and other progressives, members of the squad and others, we're speaking truth to power and calling it out. And that is going to pull people in, hopefully, God willing. And 2024 is so big, not just for the presidential election.
Yeah.
There's seats in the Senate that we can win. And if we win those seats, we can have transformational legislation passed in 2025, but 2024 is going to be key. So we got to organize in every crevice of this country to knock on doors and get the vote out to do what's necessary.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that I always talk about in terms of organizing is you have to build credibility with your communities. You can't just swoop in
during election season.
Yeah.
You know, it's an election in a month or two. Now I'm going to come knock on your door. You're absolutely right.
You can't do the hey big head text. You know, y'all text us every 5 minutes for some money. So text us about some other stuff, you know, and I just appreciate like you being willing to come on this show. I think it's so important for Black electeds in particular, but any kind of elected to do Black media and talk to these audiences, because we really are moving the needle when we have these conversations. But speaking of not working for people, you know, there's some people that have a view that, okay, Republicans are in charge of the House, the Democrats are in charge of the Senate, nothing is going to get done. Why should I pay attention? Can you talk a little bit about, like, for instance, something that the Republicans are doing unilaterally that people should be paying more attention to, or what's happening in the House, whether it's on the Democratic side or the Republican side, that should be getting more focus from people right now?
Number one, Republicans aren't doing anything on common sense gun control legislation at all. We have approached them individually and collectively. Do you support universal background checks? No. Do you support universal red flag laws? No. Do you support universal safe storage? No. Do you support a ban on assault rifles? No. Do you want to do something about gun trafficking in our communities? No. They are doing absolutely nothing. People need to pay attention to that. In addition to that, Republicans just passed a budget. Their budget looks to cut things that people of color, Black people, and marginalized people have to have in order to have an amazing quality of life. They're cutting child care workers. They're removing safeguards for rail workers. They're looking to cut education while also claiming that they care about what's happening with our children in our schools. They continue to try to attack Medicare and Social Security for retirees. This is what they are doing. On the flip side of that, Democrats are trying to provide universal child care. You know what that means? Free child care. That is quality, that is paid for by large corporations and the wealthy paying their fair share. Free child care. We are also trying to provide low-cost utility payments, where your utility payments are no more than 3% of your salary.
Okay.
Also looking to provide low-cost, affordable housing. That is quality. No one in the country should pay more than 25% of their salary towards housing. We have people paying 50, 60, 70%, and it hurts those who are the poorest among us. We are pushing paid leave so that 6 weeks after your child is born, you're not running back to work. Have tremendous imbalance in our economy. Two of the wealthiest Americans own more wealth than the bottom 50%. Corporations have to contribute their fair share. The wealthy have to contribute their fair share. If we want to cut costs somewhere, our military spends more money than the next 8 countries combined. That's a place to cut costs. And we have to remove red tape so that people who need government assistance can access it, because poverty is killing us. Poverty is contributing to the trauma and the mental health challenges. Combine that with access to guns, have mass shootings and a crisis in these areas. So those are the things Democrats are working on. Republicans, unfortunately, continue to focus on a so-called fiscal conservative agenda. But the reality is the last 3 Republican presidents have left the White House with more debt than the last 3 Democratic presidents.
Hello, the math is not mathing on conservatives.
We got to tell the truth. Also, by the way, they're attacking trans people. They're fear-mongering about the border, fear-mongering about crime. And the number one thing we can do to end crime is end poverty. You end poverty, you end crime. Right.
I mean, poverty is a policy choice, and nobody wants to recognize, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people want what they feel like is an instant fix, like more police, more carceral system. But then you don't want the cheaper solution, which is actually to end poverty, like have a child tax credit.
Yes, that's right. We allowed the child tax credit to end. To your point about mass incarceration, we incarcerate more people by far than any other developed nation, and we have more guns by far than any other developed nation. And that continues the proliferation of senseless killing and death, poverty, and also inequality, because it disproportionately harms people of color, both of those areas that we talked about.
So speaking of trying to make the justice system more fair, you just this week introduced what's called the R.A.P Act, which is about trying to have artists get protections for First Amendment right protections so that their lyrics are not used against them in court proceedings. Can you talk a little bit about that?
R.A.P is free speech. Period. End of story. Full stop. R.A.P is free speech. And so to see rap lyrics used well over 500 times over the last 10 years in criminal proceedings without other evidence is deplorable. That is not a justice system. We have a young man, and there are many others, but one young man that always comes to mind for me, Tommy Kennedy in Wisconsin, was 17 years old when he was convicted to life in prison because of his rap lyrics. Only, no other evidence, right? What we're saying is, if you want to use a lyric, you better have other substantial evidence.
Right.
You see prosecutors going after rappers with no evidence other than lyrics. And it's only happening in rap. Other genres of music, there were 4 cases. 3 were thrown out. 1 was overturned on appeal.
Okay.
With all other genres of music combined.
Yeah.
So an attack on rap is another attack on Black men disproportionately. That's who dominates the rap industry. And listen, if we allow rap to be targeted, who's to say another prosecutor or judge or president won't come in and begin to target other genres of music,
right,
or other forms of art? So this is about protecting art. That's why RAP stands for Restoring Artist Protections. This is about protecting art in all its forms: music, literature, movies, because rap is all of that. It's journalism, it's fiction and nonfiction, it's poetry, it's personification, it's literature, it's all of it. So we want to make sure the rap community knows that we are fighting with them, standing with them strong here in Congress to make sure they're not criminalized for their art.
Right. And, it actually reminds me, you're talking about the next steps. I know you talked about other genres, but it reminds me of, Vice President Kamala Harris. She talked about her time as district attorney and how people would make judgments about, people, other people out there because of the kind of music they're listening to. And she's like, I have that tape in my car, and so even if you might feel like, well, I'm not a rapper, this has nothing to do with me. If you listen to rap music, I know I like the City Girls, I like Lotto, I like this new girl Mellow Books and all this bop, bop, bop. I like the drill stuff. I know that people don't like the drill stuff. I like it, but the bottom line is, what if they look at like who you follow on Instagram or who you're using in your reels?
That's right. That's right.
Like, it can go anyway. So we have to try to always root out the ways in which Black people in particular are targeted in ways that are unfair. It's important that we aren't criminalizing people, even if their music is a little, violent, even if their music has some stuff in that doesn't convict them.
Listen, to quote Jadakiss, you like movies? What kind of movies you watch?
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. We like action movies. John Wick is one of the highest grossing films of all time. They're on part 4. Look at the Fast and the Furious franchise. I mean, you could go on and on and on. It's art, it's creativity, it's culture. And one of the things that's important is, a lot of people use art to express things that they may think within that they would never express in real life or never actually act out or do. The other point I want to make is, the last point is, we had, for this bill introduction, we had artists from all walks of life standing with us, because the point we wanted to make was, this is not just about rap. This is about protecting art and artists' ability to express themselves. I said it at the press conference, creativity is humanity and art is air. And that's why freedom of speech is so important, because literally your ability to express yourself is the air you breathe. So this bill is about protecting that.
All right. Well, Congressman Bowman, I so appreciate you for coming on the Reecie Colbert Show. You have to come back again.
I will.
We got something else to discuss, and you have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Peace and love, y'all.